What's going on, everybody? You know what time it is. It's time for Elevated Vibes right here on IntellectualRadio.com. This is the iHeart radio station. Now, alongside me, as you always know, I got my boy.
The boss man, because he always leads from the
front. And pretty soon we will have another special guest speaker, Mr. Denasha Harrison. This is Elevated Vibes Radio, everybody. Now check it out. You know the deal. You want to get with this conversation. 708-223-8953. Once again, that is 708-223-8953. Or you can always hit us up with your questions and anything else on Facebook Live. All right, everybody. For a long time, many of us either have lived the American dream or have endured the American nightmare. Part of that is due to the fact that we've accepted a system that says everyone is on the same level, playing field, whatever you want to call it, and we all could achieve success if we have the initiative and work hard. Now, we all know the truth. That is untrue. There's a disparity in knowledge, health, and wealth. And deep down, all of us, we know to get everyone to accomplish that dream, we must push towards that level playing field, that is, in all aspects. Tonight, as a collective, our conversation, we will step towards that level playing field in wealth. Now to start this off with you, boss man, talk to me.
What you want to talk about, sir? What we talking about?
That to get to that level playing field within wealth, the bridge, that wealth gap that is sitting out here amongst us.
Well, let's talk about equality. What does that mean within the context of the broader American dream? This country was founded on this belief of giving your tired, your poor, and your huddled masses. And, you know, the great experiment that is known as the American dream assumes that if you work hard, that you will accomplish or achieve this thing called the American dream, which for us, I think means the picket fence, house, 2 cars, and stuff like that. But for so many of us, it is almost a fantasy. And so we need to look at those factors that are contributing to that. There is a growing disbelief in this country that the American dream is possible. You know, there's 2 things that are deceptive about the American dream. One is that it's within reach for everybody, and 2, that everybody can become a millionaire. And when those are the cornerstones or the basis of the foundation of the belief, I think that's why we are seeing the rise of the strong man in this country.
And you know, a lot of times that strong man, if they're millionaires and billionaires and all that, those are some that have profited off of generational wealth.
Oh, I never understood how people profit off of division. But the fact is, historically, before slavery or even during slavery, before we defined it by this racial context, was that we had indentured servants in this country. And the establishment, rich folks, figured out that it's more of them than us. So we have to find a way to keep them separated. So, when slavery was first started here, you had the indentured servants, those of, I believe, primarily Irish descent, and indentured servitude, where they were bonded to a certain master or to the land for a certain amount of time, and it was, as people looked at it and saw that the slaves, or excuse me, the Africans and the indentured servants were teaming up, they had to come up with a way to divide them, because again, it's more of them than us. So if I got, bonded servants to my land and the Africans, they're more likely to team up and kill me and take my land. So I got to figure out a way to separate them. So that's where we start to see the introduction of this notion of slavery and colorism. You know what I'm saying? Like it was always there. Africans were always coming, but they had the Irish and those who were indentured working alongside them. You know what I'm saying? So now to separate them, and it's the same game plan that's been ran throughout history. We're going to separate the light skinned natives from the dark skinned natives, and we're going to give one group privilege over the others. And the history of colonialism throughout the world. So to separate them, well, we're going to say, okay, you're no longer indentured servants. We're going to give you a little something. But them, they have no rights. And now you're above them. And so we're willing to sacrifice and give up a little piece of the pie in order to maintain our power and our hope. This all bears to fruition and comes to fruition with President Lyndon B. Johnson and his passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, when he says, when you can convince a poor white man, that he is better than the average black man, he will always vote against his economic interests. And I'm paraphrasing it badly, but you get the idea and the gist of what he's saying. And so you have to look and you have to say, who benefits from this? Who benefits from holding out the American dream? Who benefits from you not achieving the American dream? One of the most powerful questions I've always heard is, how much did they pay you to give up on your dream?
That's true. We've seen that, and let's just say you pass up the generational wealth that you can accomplish by, let's just say, taking that payment or whatever. I'm gonna go on kind of off on what you were saying. You do lose out, because things such as this wealth gap, which it came from a lot of generational wealth, it is not being accomplished within, you know, within minority households, but it's being accomplished with the within Caucasian households. You know, wealth, if you have it and you're not investing it in a way that it can build and it can keep growing and so forth, you go to the maybe the third generation from it.
Well, let's stop there. First, let's talk about wealth.
Yeah.
What is wealth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wealth is the ability to have your money work for you. Right.
Exactly.
Where you're not working for your money.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I was saying with the generational wealth. You know, if you don't know or have the knowledge of, the stocks or the businesses or the bonds, or, you don't have the land, you really can't build the wealth that will stay, that has a staying power.
Well, first of all, when you're talking, and I'm only speaking particularly about African Americans.
Right. But I'm saying in general, but yeah, go ahead.
There have not been the opportunities to accumulate generational wealth. There hasn't. As I pointed out numerous times on this show.
Yes.
My parents grew up under de facto segregation.
Right.
They marched in the civil rights. My parents, of course, were significantly older. My mom was, 30 something when she had me, and my dad was 40 something. So that's, given the decades in which we were born, that was actually pretty late to have children. During our parents' times, if you say that they are, what's the generation before the boomers, post-war babies, um, World War II. No, because
Baby
my dad
boomers
was
or
baby.
something like that.
No,
Right?
the generation before baby boomers. So,
Oh, okay.
they are those that generation typically had children in the early 20s, maybe late teens. So for my parents' generation to have me at 30 and 40 plus, it was kind of late. So, you know, my parents grew up under de facto. So my parents grew up in the South, you know. So that's one. Two, you and I, as we sit here at the table, are the first of our generation of our parents who have grown up unencumbered per se by de facto segregation, um, be it educational, be it educational, political, or economically. My grandmother was a civil rights worker. She worked in Little Rock, Arkansas, to get Black people to vote. So I'm literally two generations from being able to vote. My grandmother had to work to accumulate the vote. My parents grew up under Jim Crow or segregation. I don't know but I know they were both arrested for marching in civil rights marches. So
Yeah, as me in that time were.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. So presumably they didn't have the right to vote or to fully participate in the system. They would have, in fact, been denied the right to housing and things like that. My parents escaped the South and came north. I don't know if it would be considered during that um, Great Migration, but they came here and they had to start from nothing. Great Migration, but they came here and they had to start from nothing, right? So when you're talking about generational wealth, what you're talking about in essence is who had a head start, right? So now that's not to mention all of the other factors that can contribute to the loss of generational wealth. For instance, our generation has been hit by at no less than three economic crises, right? Recall the dot bomb, the dot boom, what was it, dot com bust?
Yes.
So that was one that hit our generation. So that affected yours and my ability to accumulate because that hit right when we were coming out of school or should have been coming out of school. All right. Then we had 2006 to 2012. So generational, not only that, but you also have to remember that when America has a cold, Black people have, a flu. So that disproportionately affected African American wealth because a lot of African Americans work where in the public sector. What was one of the sectors that was hit hardest during the 2006 to 2012 crisis? The public sector. They were laying government people off left and right, laying teachers off left and right. So now that which is was tenuous is now lost. All right, and now you're also dealing with COVID, and recouping the losses from COVID, So the ability to gather generational wealth has been hamstrung, hampered, and all of that stuff. Not to mention we ain't even gonna talk about redlining and the devaluation of Black-owned homes, or the taking of Black men out of the homes, or and I mean some may take issue with this, the declining rates of education for Black men. Black men not going to college and being outpaced by Black women. I'm not saying it's inherently good or bad, but it has negative consequences because we know in this country that men typically make more than women, right? But when you take the Black man out of the home, falling marriage rates, although Black people traditionally our fathers are more involved than any other races in their children's lives, these are all factors that contribute to the economic gap.
That's true. I mean, the gap, as we speaking about, is, I mean, it's absolutely huge. All right. Now, from some of the readings that I went through, the four typical households, you have Asian, white, Hispanic, and black. On the top, you have the Asian household that can average over $320,000 a year, while the African American household on the average. So I'm like I said, everybody is on the average. So those who make a million a year, I'm also putting you with the average of those who's just getting by. All right. The average is $27,000 a year. And with Caucasian households being number two at 250,000 and Hispanic being almost 50,000. Okay. We have to see on how to, excuse me, not see, but we have to bring closure to this gap.
Do we?
The only way to make the change that each and every citizen of America get to accomplish that American dream. So we have to make the change to make this closure of that gap. So saying that and being that, anything just shooting from the hip from you, all right, that you would believe would help make that change. Just shooting from the hip. It doesn't have to be nothing technical. Just,
I mean, the problem of the racial gap and the wealth gap is multifaceted. I think we have to just look into the heart of it first and foremost. One thing is to promote more entrepreneurship in Black communities and communities of color, home ownership, life insurance policies, those kinds of things, financial education, home ownership. We know that home ownership is one of the biggest boosters to generational wealth. Death preparation, passing on monies, funeral preparation, so that the debt that is one generation doesn't carry on to the other. We need to reconsider college education, whether or not the financing of it. That's one of the keys that we've always discussed is education. But what good does it do to make $150,000 if you have $300,000 in debt? So we need to start talking about these things. We need to look at political policies. There's a real aversion in this country to making anything particular for one group of subset people. You know what I'm saying? It's discriminatory. Well, is it discriminatory if the other group has never had a chance to fully participate in it?
True that. Now, everybody, we're going to take a small musical break. We will be right back. And we also have our third speaker coming up with a surprise right here on Elevated Vibes Radio. We're going to come up with the
Okay.
Let me get a minute.
All right. We'll switch up tonight, guys. So just give us 1 second. We'll bring on our other guests. All right.
Hey, sir, how you doing? Right here?
Yes, sir.
Camera.
You want to switch or you want?
Unless you want to, I'm good.
No, man, like that shirt, bro. Oh, thanks, man. The more I get, the more this belly get hid.
Yeah, we're talking about.
All right.
So push that back just a little bit so you can get on camera.
Hey, Earl, he's going to take the lead coming in from here. So when we come in, we're going to come in on him. Okay, is that cool? All right.
That's good right here.
Hey, long as you cool.
Seems like you want to tip over.
It does, yeah. So you just got.
Tell me when.
Okay,
You gotta get him in there.